going to be live here.
That's odd.
Hello, I am your host, Diedrich, with another episode of Put It on the Table. Today, we are continuing our series of conversations in regard to domestic violence. I'd like to welcome to the table Norma Ward, CEO of Progressive Transitions Incorporated, and Darren White, Executive Director of Realize Potential Incorporated. With their combined experience of over 50 years, they are experts in the field of domestic violence. Today we are going to talk about education, prevention, and what change looks like for you. What are some of the basics of domestic violence that we need to be educated about? Let's start with you, Mr. White.
You know what? Keep your hands to yourself. No, we're not live. We are? Oh, I didn't know we were live.
Right.
Well, let's start there. Everyone that's in a relationship, you guys should respect each other, be open to dialogue, and keep your hands to yourself. I was joking when I started, but seriously, that is one of the number one things that everyone should do this in a relationship. Once you get to a point in a relationship where you're being verbally abusive, emotionally abusive, and physically abusive, that's the point when things have to be addressed and dealt with. Because once it gets to that, it can lead to murder, people being arrested, you losing your family, and losing everything that you worked for. So you must respect the person that you're in a relationship and be open to dialogue and change if that's what you want to do to try to fix the relationship.
And right now we're talking about young adults. We can talk about children too that see this in the home. Who do they talk to? Maybe the guidance counselors about what they see in the home to be able to be helped with it instead of dealing with it every day and then acting out in school, which leads to bullying, which leads to what you said, putting your hands on your significant other because that's what they see. So how, do we prevent it by trying to start younger and younger? How do we prevent it?
I think the education piece for prevention, they go hand in hand. And I think that what we have to do is start to set an example. We have to start to look at our behavior as adults. Our behavior is learned behavior. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it can be called a generational curse where it spills down from grandparents to parents to family members. This is what they see. A lot of times children are afraid to talk to a guidance counselor because they really don't even know what's going on.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So what they do is they act out what they see until they are forced to be in front of a guidance counselor who is with them with a probation officer or maybe with a school counselor who is reprimanding them. And while this is going on, the anger is just growing and growing and growing. They want to do what they saw. They want to do what they know works. Mm-hmm. So I think one of the ways that we can help prevent this is to go back as far as we can. Mm-hmm. And I think that parents, guardians, foster parents, wherever the child is or the teen or the adolescent is, they have to want to change their behavior. You can't expect somebody to not do what they see when they're 15, 14, right, because they hear, see, smell, taste life. So they learn by osmosis, but they also learn by looking. And they see, okay, if my mother or my grandmother doesn't do what my grandfather or my father says do, she gets hit, and then she does it. So this becomes a way of life for them. Power and control can start at such a young age.
Yes, yes.
And we have to really, really acknowledge that.
Yes, and any learned behavior can be unlearned.
Right.
So we have to make sure that the question that you had asked is, do they talk to a counselor? Do they? Most of the time, especially in African American households, is what happens in this house stays in this house, right? And like Ms. Ward said, it's not until something happens or a counselor is called in, the kid is called in to talk with someone, that's when this stuff comes up. So what I've been a witness to and being more prevalent nowadays is teenagers, junior high, high school age, putting their hands on each other, right? And they don't understand that that is one, domestic violence if they're in a relationship, or it's sexual assault if the boy is hitting a girl, or if the girl is hitting a boy in certain areas on their body. And they don't look at it as domestic violence, sexual assault, or being assaulted.
Right.
They think it's cute sometimes, adolescent behavior. Which some of it is, but we have to let them know that these things can lead to that, especially if you're in a relationship and you're seeing these things at home, and now you're acting out the way you see your mother or father treating their spouse or significant other.
Touching on that point you said about what happens in this house stays in the house. I think the only way you can combat that is, I remember back in school we would have people that came and talked at the school, and it's talking to everybody, but the kid doesn't have to worry about having to say something about the family. He's, I have an option to go and say what I'm feeling or how I'm feeling. Because when you hold those feelings in, that empowerment your father has over your mother or your mother has over your father, you take that into school. And now you have these kids empowering over each other and putting their hands on each other. I think when you have something like that where everything is hidden in the house, more outreach and more talking and more, like the rallies you have at school, to nip it in the bud at a young age before it gets to so ingrained that it goes to the next generation and the next generation.
There has to be a space made for that to happen in the schools, and it has to be open and confidential and welcoming for a youth or even an adult, even an adult to feel that they have an option to do that, because they don't want to be judged. They don't want what's happening to get out and talked about. And then there's also that aspect of, once I say this, they're going to talk to my parents. Or once I say this as an adult, what's the next step? Is this going to affect my relationship? Right. Is it going to affect my job if you talk to someone in your HR or if they're making space for this to happen? So there's, it starts with a non-judgmental, open space where these conversations can happen. So if anyone is in these situations that are being abused or having a domestic violence situation, to be able to be discussed.
Right.
I think that is exactly correct. I think one of the things that is also missing is balance. There is no balance. So if you are in a household where there is no balance, you're not going to be able to balance yourself when you're out in the street, because you're not going to know how.
Right.
You're not getting the necessary tools that you need to survive, to be able to walk away from a situation, or understand if you want to hold someone's hand in school and they say no, that you don't attack. You'd be like, you're like, okay, that's great. But if there's no balance, but also with adults, again, it's been happening so long. How do you retract? How do you retract everything that you've gone through in multiple relationships? One of the things I think we have to really stop and think about is some people are not comfortable unless there's an altercation going on. If you're not arguing with me or you're not in my face about something, you don't love me. And this comes from me working with women that I've worked with that are as old as 55 years old. You know, they're in it, they've been in it for 25 years, and they're like, I don't, you know, this is what we do.
That's what we know.
This is what we know. This is what I know. And so you know it, your grandchildren know it, your daughter knows it, or your son knows it. So we have to work and look at how can she change at that point? How can she be the focal point for the family, for the grandkids to say, you know what, this is not how it should be done. And I think that it goes back to hearing a grandparent or a mother say, you know what, I don't want you to grow up like I did. I want you to be like me, but I want you to take care of yourself. I want to instill you with survival methods, but positive ones. But some parents teach their kids, look, go out, do this, do that, you got to do this, you got to get in somebody's face, and they carry that with them. And then they don't know how to shut it off. So it just goes from 18 to 24 to 30, and before you know it, like Darren said, they're incarcerated, they've got restraining orders, they're doing support groups, they're doing everything that they can do in order to remain free.
So these are educational tools
Yeah,
that they
those are
need.
educational tools.
And what are some other educational tools that they can use? Because I know once you start on the topic and you're trying to peel the onion of the topic of domestic violence, there's a rabbit hole. It goes all the way down, and it's our past history. It's our you know, it's so ingrained. And the more I viewed the topic and I was studying it, and I was like, it just needs to be more out there, just more, because we're used to seeing things as a culture. We're more visual. Domestic is wrong, violence is wrong. If it's constantly being said, maybe that would help tend to change people's perspective, even the abuser and the abusee and the ones that are looking at it. If there was a constant barrage of advertisement about it, because it's hard to sit there and talk with a family that's very, you know, militant or strong, or no, we don't talk about this. But when it's constantly around, the family eventually starts talking together, like, maybe we should change
Restorative
this.
practices groups can come in, because what that's going to do is look at the tension. It's going to teach you that one of the things I think we forget is that domestic violence affects everybody in the family.
Yes, it does.
Everybody.
And the neighbors.
Yeah, the neighbors, not only the people in the exact residence, but if you're in a situation and you leave and you go stay with your sister and he goes and stays with his aunt, they're now involved in this situation with you because you're housing them. So in order for the healing to take place, the education to take place, now everybody needs to come to the table and be able to say, having you here was great, but I felt in danger. I felt that I didn't know if he or she was going to show up, or if you, and when you go back, it really, that back and forth really can throw people into turmoil where you're looking for somewhere to stay and they say, no, you cannot come here. But I think it hasn't really happened. I remember when domestic violence was on billboards and everything, when O.J. Simpson's wife got killed. It became a total, let's do it, let's do it, let's do it, let's show
Almost
it.
like
let's
the
see
war
it.
on drugs.
It was
the
everywhere.
war on domestic
Yeah,
violence.
but then all of a sudden, after that died out, it went away. Yeah, it's just like when Nancy Reagan had her slogan going, just say no. That became a slogan. And then all of a sudden, when that was done and the money was put into it and everybody had their Just Say No t-shirts and all that, then that died out. Domestic violence cannot die out because people die in it.
Yeah.
So it's not something that can go away. It's shown in TikTok, it's shown in whatever videos are out. I don't even know all of them. But it is shown as something that's, okay, it happens.
Yeah. I want to touch on something Brother Dietrich said about it being put out there. Just in the last, couple of weeks, I've seen some new domestic violence commercials. And I was surprised that, we were talking about domestic violence during holidays.
That's why it's out.
And I was like, wow, this is a coincidence that they're running these commercials. So that I've seen 2 within the last couple weeks, and I've seen them multiple times. So someone has had the thought process that it's the holidays, and they know this is happening. So I'm pretty sure it's some domestic violence organization that has put these last 2 commercials out these last 2
And it
weeks.
touches everybody.
Yeah,
I mean,
it does.
we
It shows
had
the
to deal
children.
with
It shows how the children reacted in the video. It shows how how she reacts when her husband or whoever he is in the video puts a glass down in the sink and makes her jump.
That's
right?
the Purina commercial.
And then he's gone somewhere and she has a phone and she gets the kids and she leaves. So it was right on point from what we've been doing with the podcast and what we've been discussing. So it's time for all of us and anyone in these situations to really make a major decision to get this information out. The people that may be involved in these domestic violence situations, to make a conscious effort and decision. What's your next steps? It's time to make a change for themselves, their family, and for lack of a better term, to save their life.
And I think that is so amazing that you said that, because you've got to be led to it. When you're sitting in a house, and I think about it's time for people to change. How do I go about doing this? Number one, you have to first say there is something wrong. And, we see enough to know that, people know if they try to leave, they can get killed. You can't go. You got to try to leave when
Try to
somebody's
say
not
something.
home. You got to say something. But you can't say anything. But one of the things I think with those commercials that are out, it shows the violence against animals and how these major companies that make dog food and all this are now making places for people to go with their pets, because the pet is used as a catalyst for the violence. But let's not forget about the suicide. It is huge. It is huge in domestic violence, and it's never tied in. So sometimes women take their lives or men take their lives, and we don't know why. And then all of a sudden somebody comes and says, well, she was being abused for a long time. So we don't even look at the long range effect that I'm out, I'm in, I'm stuck, I can't go anywhere. Why should I be here? So I think what we got to try to figure out as providers is making it okay but safe for somebody to say, I want to go talk to somebody. So they have to figure out the right time to do it, the safe time to do it. We used to do home visits, but now you can't do that anymore. You can't go into somebody's home and assess what's going on because it's not allowed. So how do we get people to come to the Justice Center, to your office, to my office, to say, I'm here, I'm being abused, because number one, they have to have somewhere to go as soon as they leave us. They
So
can't go back
leads
where
us
they were.
that leads us right into other things on how to combat it, like people being more vocal about their experiences, and more people just talking about it. Not too long ago, I saw a commercial. It was 2 people watching a commercial about domestic violence, and the commercial touched the woman in such a way that the husband looked over at her and she was crying. She was looking at this commercial, and he felt guilty. And I was like, that's a way to touch people, to make them see it themselves without, well, you're doing this. Nobody wants to hear that. No one's going to respond to that or the interventions or anything like that. Just like you said, whatever happens in this house stays in the house. But when you touch a person's heart, they have so many commercials that do that, especially for our culture, because we are a very, very emotional people, very emotional people.
I think that I haven't seen that commercial, but I think that's excellent, because it used to be that, things would happen in the faith-based community a lot, especially before the pandemic. There were times when you could go in and have conferences and have workshops around this. We need to figure out how we can open this topic up on a broader spectrum and say, you know, every month on the fourth Tuesday of every month, it's going to be open to the public to come and learn about domestic violence, not just in your house, but with your children. Because a lot of people know their children are going through this based on what happened, but they're trying to figure out, how can I identify this, keep them safe, keep myself safe? We have to figure out how we can, like you said, have it where somebody goes home and says, you know what, I'm sorry. I heard something today that made me think that I might be doing this. It's an inward thing. Working with men and working with women, it's an inward journey. You have to go in and say, you know what, this is what I'm doing. But nobody's ever called me on it. This is what my father did to my mother. But we have to be able to figure out, as we will, how we can take this now to the next level, passing law enforcement, you know, passing restraining orders, just having somewhere
And all of our
safe.
all of our topics,
Yeah.
education, prevention, all sort of run hand in hand. They all you need for the prevention. You need the education. You need you
gotta
need
have it-
all
They
this.
have to do it in a good, safe place.
They have to feel safe to
You have
do
to
it.
feel safe and have to feel welcome.
Yes.
And you're not looking around the room to see who's here. You're
Right.
glad everybody's
Right.
here.
Not being judged. Like
No, you're not being judged at
put it
all.
on the table.
Yeah.
That's right.
Other things of prevention, I was thinking when I was doing more research on it, and because the conversation has been having like on the podcast, because everyone wants to know about relationships, and so everything we deal with at birth, everything we deal with in life is relationships, whether it's our job, it's our neighbor, with our mom or dad or wife, or intimate partners. I just feel that people need to focus on themselves and being the strongest they can be themselves. It starts with you. I feel that it starts with that person, and how do I want to be remembered? The abuser should be saying, well, how do I want to be remembered? The one being abused, why do I keep letting this happen in front of my children?
I wanted to touch on that a little bit as well. You know, a person has to love themselves to be able to love someone else. And like you said, it has to start within, right? And we know hurt people hurt people. We have to do a deep dive in ourselves as individuals, right? And this is a case by case, right? But some people can get in relationships and everything's fine. Others are bringing in baggage. And everybody has their own baggage, and everybody's been through some type of trauma, right? But some people just jump on into the, oh, she fine, right? Oh, he cute. Oh, he got a nice car. She looks like this. I want to talk to her. I want to be in a relationship with this person. And they get, get physical, well, not to say intimate, early on in these relationships. They don't know.
They don't know the
They don't
person.
know the
They
person.
don't know the
You
person.
don't even know yourself.
They don't even know the person. When my parents raised me up, when I had company come over, they were like, well, okay, well, basically, who's your people? Right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Old school,
Who's your
old school,
people?
yeah.
Where are you from? They need to know that nowadays, just the internet and microwave society, everybody wants something so quick and fast.
Exactly.
To jump right in.
Which leads
you
me
don't
to-
know. Go ahead.
You know, like you said, who's your people? What do you know
Exactly.
about him? Or
And
do
what
you
is
know about her?
what is all this going to look
Yeah.
like to us? And
Yeah.
what does this look like to us? What is the prevention and the education together as a whole? As we're in 2023, 2024 is right around the corner.
Yes, it is.
And now domestic violence was different 20 years ago before this
Absolutely, it
technology.
was.
Because now you get bullied and everybody
Yep, the
across the
cyberbully
world
can
can see
see
it in seconds.
Yeah.
And it's so,
Instant.
it
It should be instant.
makes you,
It makes you think.
Instant.
Yeah.
it makes you think, and it just makes your heart hurt for the world and how sad and lost some people are, in that dark corner some people feel they can't get out of.
Yeah.
And we just have to keep coming up with more different ideas. So what it looks like to us is a peaceful progression of getting away from the domestic violence and intimate partner violence.
It's an ongoing thing because we don't have the answer.
No.
But I think one of the things we have to remember that I had to learn is that it is not a cultural or ethnic issue. It is across the board. It is part of so many cultures that the man is in charge. You don't question, you don't ask questions, you do what he says. There were so many stigmas that were out years and years and years ago, but nothing was looked at it the way we're trying to look at it now. Like you said, it died out, but the pain that people have suffered over the years has stayed with them. So trying to figure out how to make this erupt like a volcano, just, oh my God, something new. I'm not afraid anymore. I have somebody I can go talk to.
Right.
I can go in confidence and do this, and you don't have to tell anybody, and I can bring my children. Because many times you could not bring your children into certain facilities because of the danger that they would be exposed to. But now, we're going to work at our hardest to change it.
Exactly, exactly.
I think this what we're doing now is bringing light to this conversation and this topic, and I'm looking forward to continuing to have this conversation
Yeah.
so we can help people. It's all about helping. Someone could watch this and make a decision that may save their life by listening to us here talking about this topic of domestic violence. It's prevalent
Every single day.
and across religion, across race, everything. Anybody can be a victim or a perpetrator of domestic violence.
And growing up in California, there's so many, they got Mothers Against Drunk Driving, they've got Weave, they've have all these things for women, which are T-shirts and they hats but then there's the men, and you barely hear about that, or and now it's changing because more men are like, I'm not going to put up with this, and we're going to change it.
I think one thing we want to remember in doing the work that we do and doing these forums is that I always want people to understand that domestic violence is a silent killer. It is a very silent killer because it's not something that you tell somebody. So I hope someone may hear and say, you know what, this is happening to me. Take your time. You have to work through it. You can't just jump up and say, okay, I'm getting ready to do this because I heard it on a podcast or saw it on TV or somewhere. You've got to think it through. But my goal with people is to help them think it through in a safe spot and for you to go and come as you please. If you're here 1 week and you're ready to go, and the next week you're here and you're not ready to go, I'm still okay with that.
Right.
But to know that there is this ongoing support and this ongoing intervention until when you do finally reach the point where you say, you know what, I'm ready to get a restraining order. I'm ready to go. Because many times people lose their lives behind this because they lost their voice as well.
Right.
Yes.
I would like to thank my guests, Norma Ward of Progressive Transitions and Darren White, Executive Director of Realize Potential Incorporated. I would also like to thank you, our audience. You could have chosen to be anywhere at this time, but you took the time out of your busy day to join us. And for that, I say thank you. If there's anyone who needs help dealing with domestic violence situation, or if you know someone who needs help, please don't hesitate to call the Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. This is Diedrich, your host, Put It on the Table. Remember, today we put it on the table, so tomorrow you have the courage to put it on your table. Be vigilant, be determined, be purposeful, and stay safe.